I showed you this animation a few lessons ago. It's of a car moving past some background, and it looks like the background is kind of never ending, so it's moving forwards, this car, past an endless amount of background. And in fact that's an illusion, because this animation is reusing all these images, so as the grass goes past, you'll see the same grass going past again, and then you'll see the same grass going past again. So this is on a loop. It's a background loop, and all these images are on these types of loops, so the grass, the road, the hills and the clouds. And so that's just a way of saving drawing a very large amount of grass, when in fact just one loop will achieve the same effect. And there's another illusion in this animation caused by the speeds of the loops. So the loop of the road and the grass is moving more quickly than the loop of the hills and the clouds, and it looks like it's closer to us, the viewer, for that reason. In fact, this is a two-dimensional flat image, so there's no distance in this image, but because of the relative speeds of these loops, it looks like towards the bottom of the stage is closer to us, and towards the top of the stage is further away. So I'm going to show you in this lesson how to achieve a background loop effect. And to start with, I'm going to show you a more simple loop, which is a series of colours going past as a kind of rainbow of circles. So I'm going to start by looking at a slide to represent that. So our frame, our stage, is represented by this square. We're going to start on frame 1 with a red circle in it, and then we're going to move this symbol towards the left, so that it looks like the stage, or alternatively you could say the stage is moving towards the right. So the stage will go and finish at this purple dot, and then it will continue by looping back to the original position. So you might be able to see a potential problem with this, and I'll show you in Flash how it works. I'm going to create a tween. I'm going to insert frames first, and then create the motion tween. I'm not going to worry about how many pixels per frame it moves, I've just chosen a random kind of frame number there. And in this case, to move the purple dot to the position where the red dot is at the moment, I have to move this 1200 pixels to the left. So I'm going to put in minus 1100. So that purple dot in the last frame is where the red dot is in the first frame. So I control test. That's the last frame, and it immediately jumps to the first frame when it reaches the last frame. And you can see that it's not a continuous loop, because the purple is instantly replaced by the red, and that spoils the continuity of this particular loop. So we're going to have to rethink that idea. And you can see here that those are the two the frames, the last frame of the animation and the first frame of the animation. You can see there's an instantaneous change, and that's what breaks this particular loop. So it'd be much better if instead of a purple dot at the end, if it was a red dot at the end. So in order to set that up, it would look something like this, with a red dot at the end and a red dot at the start, and that might create our loop. So let's see how that works. I'll just remove this tween, and let's go into the symbol, double click on it, and Control C to copy that red and paste it at the end. So it now looks like what it looks like in the slide. Red dot at the beginning, red dot at the end. Let's put our motion tween back in again. This time I'm going to have to move it 1400 pixels, to get the red dot at the end to the position of the red dot at the beginning. So I'm going to take that to minus 1300. And let's do a control test. So red dot at the end, red dot at the beginning. And you can see there's still a problem there. And let's have a look at it in the slides to see it better. So there's our last frame, and there's our first frame, and you can see that they're not the same image. So there's a bit of white space there, a bit of white space there, and those look different in those two frames, and that's what is currently breaking our loop. So the thing we need to do is to have these two frames must look the same in order to make our loop continuous. So we're going to have purple in the first frame and orange in the last frame. And so we're going to have to set up our dots like this so that there's purple at the start and orange at the end. So let's do that in Flash. Let's get the purple dot, Control C, Control V to copy and paste it. Then the same with the orange. Let's put the tween back in. I'm still wanting to move the red dot at the end to the position of the red dot at the beginning. And to do that I'm going to move it 1400 pixels in this case. That's just because of the length of this particular symbol. And I'm going to control test it. And now you can see it's looking like a continuous loop. But there's still one minor issue, and that is that the end frame is the same as the start frame, and in this loop it's going to spend 2 frames on the same image, which will create a slight delay, and you might notice it in the animation if you look carefully. So I'm just going to do what I did in the last lesson. I put in a new layer and I'm setting a keyframe in the last frame, and I'm going to put some action scripts in there. Go to and play 2. So that's going to miss out the first frame in each loop of this animation. And what that means is it's only going to spend one frame on the last, on the initial image, and also which is the same as the last image. So I've now got myself a continuous loop, and that's the basic principle of creating all background loops, that you must have your first and your last image the same. You can see it better on the slide. So the last image there is identical to the first image, so that when you switch this symbol back to the original position, you don't notice it. So the project that I'm going to give you now is to do the same with the car that I showed you at the start. And it's quite a complicated image, but each of the layers has to move 640 pixels, so it's not too bad to add some tweens to those. Although if you're feeling adventurous, you can also do the same in ActionScript. The thing to remember though with these tweens is that the further back in the image you go, they're going to have to move more slowly, so you're going to have to set it up to do that. I'll show you an example with the road. I'll just show you how it's set up. So you can see that there's like in the rainbow, there's a repeat of what is shown on the first stage. So this is the first image in the first frame, and the image in the last frame is off the stage at the moment, but it's exactly the same. So that when the loop reaches the end frame, and when it jumps back to the first frame, you won't notice the difference because the first frame and the last frame are exactly the same. Okay? So I'm going to show you the road as an example. So it might help if I just make the car invisible, so it's more clear that the first and the last frames are the same. Double click on the road, and actually I'll just show you something else first. Control test. You can see I've already set the wheels to move, and those are moving at 10 pixels forward per frame, so the road's going to have to move 10 pixels backwards to make it look realistic. So let's get rid of our car again, double click on the road. Now I said it has to move 640 pixels to complete the loop. So because it's moving 10 pixels per frame, that means I'm going to have to go to frame 64 to make 10 pixels per frame to move 640 pixels. So I'm going to insert frames in frame 64. Then I'm going to create my motion tween. I'm going to move this backwards by 640 pixels in the last frame. Okay, so that's what the last frame looks like. I'm also going to add in my keyframe and my actions. Go to and play 2, just to make sure it doesn't stick on the same image for 2 frames. And let's test that out. So now we've got the road moving. Okay, so if you can do the same thing for the other layers, remembering that the other layers are going to have to be slower, which means they're going to have to use more frames, which will be a lower number of pixels moved per frame. And as I mentioned, if you want to do the same thing in ActionScript, then you're welcome to have a go, and I'll leave the project files in a place that you can find them to check your work with. So I'm going to be leaving animations for a few lessons and focusing instead on ActionScript coding again. And then we'll return to animations later on when we can apply more complicated ActionScript to them.